Howdy, folks. It's another episode of the Rico and Declan College Football Show. I'm your host, Rico. That is our theme song. I forgot to put it on the other episodes. We're on episode 4. I can't believe it. I'm really excited for this episode today. Be going over the transfer portal, the wide receivers. I'm going to say running backs, but I'm going to go over the wide receivers. But before I do, there's some college football news I want to get to. My Florida State Seminoles have named their QB. They're going to have Ashton Daniels. He was a QB transfer from Auburn. He previously played at Stanford. Daniels, I don't think is that good. I don't like the idea of putting him in the starter role before the season even started. We still have to go through training camp, and then Florida State opens the season against New Mexico State. I just don't think Daniels is that good. I don't think he's the right guy. And we had a good backup last year. I forgot the guy's name, but I wish there was a QB competition, and I just don't think Daniels is going to be the guy. So I don't know what Mike Norvell sees in him because I don't see any talent at all, and I think we're going to be terrible. Kalen DeBoer, talk about an extension. He signed for we'll double check here. So I'll get my facts straight here. I believe it was a 7-year extension, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was a 7-year extension with Alabama for $87 million, $87.5 million. And my take on this, I think this is a good move for Alabama. I know he's gotten a lot of flack from Alabama fans, but DeBoer's a good coach. I don't think he's Saban. I don't think anybody's going to top what Saban did there. Saban's a legend. He's probably the greatest head coach of our generation. But DeBoer's no slouch. And to rip on him and say, he should go or he should get fired after 2 seasons is ludicrous. And, yeah, he hasn't won big games, but he gets everything else done. He's beaten Auburn twice in the Iron Bowl. And Auburn has not looked like Auburn of the past, obviously. But still, I mean, he has a good track record, and I think it's just going to get better over time. Now, head coach for Ohio State, Ryan Day, he was throwing flack on Alabama, saying that Caleb Downs, when he got over to Ohio State, he was a mess from Alabama, saying that basically Alabama did a terrible job at developing Caleb Downs. Ryan Day, I think you should keep your mouth shut. Like, it doesn't matter, and maybe he was a mess. Who knows? But, like, it's unnecessary. I think it's a narrative that Ohio State shouldn't take. And Ryan Day has won national championship, but I don't know. I just don't like when coaches are talking smack about other programs when they don't know what the kid might have been going through, or maybe they do. I don't know. But, like, I don't like that move by Ryan Day. And then there was something else I wanted to read about. I'm not going to go over the NFL draft. This is not an NFL show, so if you're looking for that, go watch somebody else. I hate the NFL. I think it's way too many penalties. And then the fact that you got guys like Rashee Rice still being able to play after he gets into a catastrophic car accident that almost killed a person or 2 people is ridiculous. And I don't know. I've hated it for the last 4 or 5 years. I haven't really watched it. I watch Giants if they're on TV, but that's it. So yeah, we're not doing NFL draft analysis. That's not what this show is about. I'm not an NFL fan. I'm a Giants fan, but that's it. Luke Finkel says back is against the wall at Wisconsin. So I'm reading off of ESPN. Well, yeah, he went 17. He's gone 17-21, and even though his contract runs through 2032, there's a lot of pressure on Luke Finkel. I mean, I think he's done a good job with the transfer portal. He got the Old Dominion QB. He's got some other recruits, but I don't think he's the guy. And Wisconsin needs to do a better job with the NIL. They have to do a better job at recruiting. It's a mess, and I don't think they're going to be competitive this year either. Maybe they'll win 7 games, but I doubt it. Oh, there was another extension. Let's read about this. Jeff Brom has extended his contract by 8 years, 64.8 million. Jeff Brom, good coach. I think that's a perfect fit for him. He loves Louisville. He's been doing a great job there. Um, do I think he deserved an extension? Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at his record. He's gone 28-12. He made the ACC championship in 2023, lost to my Seminoles, which was one of the most ugly. It was one of the ugliest games I've ever seen for an ACC championship. We had our backup QB playing, and we still won. He's won at least 9 games each season. He's consistent. He's a good coach. Not a great coach, but a good coach. I respect him. And do I think Louisville can compete for an ACC championship? Maybe. The ACC is really wide open. I mean, look at Virginia. They went to the ACC championship game and lost to Duke. Duke was terrible out of conference, but they did well in the conference, and that's how they got that berth against Virginia. So I think it's wide open. Louisville could definitely compete for another ACC championship, and it's the perfect conference for them. Let's see what else is going on. Sankey reiterates SEC preference for a 16-team college football playoff. I'm fine with the format now, but you got to get rid of these mid-majors, playing in the conference. I mean, playing in the playoffs, like Tulane, JMU. They had no business being in the playoff. Get rid of that. All right, that's all I'm going to go over with news. So now let's go into analysis. I'm going to go over the transfer portal for the wide receiver transfers for this upcoming season. I'm going to be analyzing, let's see, I'm just counting the number of receivers here. 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm analyzing 10 receivers. So we're going to go one by one. And first off, we're going to start off with Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman is transferring over to Texas. And Cam Coleman is one of the most talented receivers Auburn's ever had, and they totally botched his career. I think he regressed last year. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had less receiving yards and he also had less receptions. So I have him a little bit off, guys. I'm a little tired. I played hockey this evening. I played at a playoff game. We lost. Had 2 goals, but it means nothing. No, he actually had more receiving yards. He had more receptions. I'm looking at his stats right now. But I think he could have done so much more at Auburn, and unfortunately it just didn't work out. He's going to a better program in Texas, and having Arch Manning as his QB is going to be huge. I think he could totally eclipse 70 receptions and over 1,000 yards receiving. He's definitely capable of it. And there were some games where he dominated. Some games he was a little stagnant and invisible, but at the same token, he had no QB at Auburn. So looking over his stats, I mean, he had Ashton Daniels. That's all you need to know. The new Florida State QB. Help us. All right. So the 2 games that stand out to me, he played good against Mizzou. He had 6 receptions for 108 yards. And then he had a great performance against Vanderbilt, and this was on the road. He had 10 receptions for 143 yards. His longs for receptions in a game, 2 times he had 46 yards. So his stats were 55 catches for 708 yards. So I think he's going to eclipse those 70 receptions and probably go over 1,000 yards with Arch Manning. He's in a way better spot. He's very talented. Texas has done a good job with developing receivers. I mean, they had Golden. I'm trying to remember some other guys they've had. Roy Williams. I know I'm going way back, but they've had a good track record with receivers. And I think that Cam Coleman could be the best receiver in the SEC. He definitely has the talent. He has the size. He's 6'3". There's no excuses here. And now he has a QB in Arch Manning. So I like this transfer, and I'm going to give it an A+. Yes, it's going to get an A+ because he's talented, and I think he's going to reach his full potential with the Longhorns. All right, next up we have Isaiah Horton. So Isaiah Horton's going from Alabama to Texas A&M. Let me just double check. Yep, I was right. So Isaiah Horton, I thought, was one of the most talented receivers that Alabama had, but he kind of got lost in the shuffle because they had Ryan Williams and Bernard. So having Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard, I think that's who it was. Yeah, it was Jeremy Bernard. Having those two guys, Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams, Isaiah Horton was the third or fourth option for Ty Simpson. And he showed flashes. There were some games he dominated, other games he was invisible. But I think he's really talented. I think he's going to really like playing for Mike Elko. And he can really revive his status for the draft. He's going into his senior year. He's not a young guy. I forgot to mention Cam Coleman is going into his junior year. So Horton's going into his senior year. This is make it or break it for him. He had 42 receptions for 511 yards. I thought he could have had over 50 receptions and 600 yards. But, again, he was lost in the shuffle with those other two receivers. The games he stood out, he played really good against Auburn. Yes, he had only 5 receptions for 35 yards, but he did have 3 key touchdowns, and that was the difference against Auburn because that Auburn game was close. Another game that he stood out in that I watched was against Mizzou. He had 3 receptions for 34 yards and a touchdown. A lot of games he had 60-plus yards receiving. He never eclipsed more than 66 yards. So his problem is getting receptions, and his problem is also getting receiving yards. So he has to do a little bit more. I think he's going to get more touches and more catches with Texas A&M. And he's going into a program that's actually going to give him a good chance. He did decent in the playoff game, and looking at his numbers, he had 5 receptions for 65 yards against Oklahoma in that win. But yeah, he's one of those guys that I feel like he hasn't reached his full potential. Has been a little bit disappointing at times, but he's still very talented. I'm going to give this grade for this transfer a B- because I think he can do more with Texas A&M, but it's all about consistency. And again, he wasn't consistent at Alabama, but at the same token, he was playing under 2 other receivers that were very talented and probably better than him. All right, Amarion Miller. So I didn't watch any Colorado games. He's going to Arizona State. I think Colorado was trash. They were terrible last year, and I think Deion's going to get fired after this season. The magic in the bottle has run out. And Amarion was their best receiver. He had 45 receptions for 808 yards. He had a long of 70 yards in a game. And he went off against my Mountaineers in a loss that we had. We lost to Colorado 29-22. He had 6 receptions for 131 yards and a touchdown. And then he had a great game against Kansas State to close the season, even though they lost 24-14. He had 8 receptions for 121 yards. He is a big dude. He's standing at 6'2", and 210. So he's a physical receiver. I've never watched this guy play, but I think that he's going over to a better situation in Arizona State, and Kenny Dillingham is going to put out his full potential. I think he's just going to get better. I believe he's going into a junior season. No, he was a junior, so he's going into his senior season. So, again, this is a guy that's looking to increase his draft status. He could be a second round, third round pick, probably. Maybe a fourth round pick, who knows. I don't know if he's first round material, but I do know he'll play better for Arizona State. I'm going to give this transfer a B plus. I think he's better than Isaiah Horton, actually. There's more upside with Miller than Isaiah Horton. All right, next up we have Reed Harris. So Reed Harris, he's going from Boston College to Arizona State. Boston College was terrible. I think they only won, 2 games? Yeah, that was right. They went 2-10. So they only beat Fordham, and they only beat Syracuse. Syracuse we're going to get to in a little bit because they have a couple guys who are transferring over to other schools that are on this list. I'm basing this off of 24/7. I'm not going to do every transfer, but I'll go over 10 guys, 11, 12 guys each time we do these transfer grades. So Reed Harris going from Boston College to Arizona State. So he's joining Miller. That alone is going to really help Kenny Dillingham with the receiving core, because when Jordan Tyson got hurt, they had no receivers, and they played this weird style of offense where they were doing kind of dual threat, and then Sam Leavitt, he got hurt, and then the backup played. It just was a mess. So Arizona State needed to get receivers because the wide receiver core besides Tyson was very, very slim. So I'm looking at Reed Harris's numbers. He had 39 receptions for 673 yards and 5 touchdowns. There were a couple games he stood out. He played great against Stanford in a loss. He had 7 receptions and 141 yards. And then against Georgia Tech, he had 5 receptions for 142 yards and a touchdown. So, and he's averaging 17 yards per catch. So that means he's a possession type receiver. I think he plays a little bit different from Omarion. He's also bigger than Omarion. He's standing at 6'5", 217 pounds. So you got 2 big receivers. You got a 6'5" receiver and you got a 6'2" receiver, and they're both over 200 pounds. That's really going to help Kenny Dillingham. I think Reed Harris has a little bit more upside than Omarion because he's younger. He's going into his junior year, where Omarion is going into his senior year. I'm going to give Reed Harris a A- transfer grade. I think this is going to really work out for Arizona State. They need him to produce. They need Miller to produce. And I think they could be better than last season. I got to look at their schedule. I got to look at the rest of the roster. We're going to be doing conference analysis during the summer. For those of you who don't know, I don't do this full time. I'm a school teacher, actually. So I can only do 1 episode per week. I could do 2 if I wanted to, but it gets very hard with time constraints and responsibilities. I'm also a dad, so spending time with my son and my wife, that comes first. So if things are going on, then we're not doing as many episodes. There will be a new episode next week. I don't know what day it will be, dropping. All right, excuse me about that. Throat's bothering me. All right, now we go on to the next recruit. We have J.J. Buchanan. He's going from Utah to Michigan. So he's joining Kyle Whittingham. And Kyle Whittingham had a decent season. I thought Utah could do a little bit better. They had a good, closing to their season. But it looked like Utah was looking to move on from him. I don't know if this move to Michigan was mutual for him to leave Utah. I think Utah kind of said to him, Kyle, thank you for all the things you've done for us, but we're looking to go a younger direction. We want a younger coach. The guy that's in waiting has been under your tutelage. So we're going to say we're replacing you, but we're not going to say we're replacing you to the public. So the way Utah went about it, I think it was a little bit sleazy. And I think Whittingham is such an underrated coach for what he's done with Utah. And I think he'll do great things at Michigan. But let's go on with this transfer he's got. J.J. Buchanan is going into his sophomore season. He's young. And the funny thing with him, 24/7, they list him as a receiver, when in fact for Utah he played as a tight end. And in that freshman year season, he had 26 receptions for 427 yards and 5 touchdowns. He averaged 16.4 yards per catch. He's physical. And I saw a couple games for Utah. I saw them against my Mountaineers. He did all right in that game. He had 3 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown. He didn't really stand out in any particular game, but he did well against Nebraska. He had 4 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown, and that was in the Vegas Bowl that killed Nebraska. Nebraska had no business being in that game. So he's only going to get better, and having him as a receiver compared to a tight end, I think that makes more sense because he's not built like a tight end. He has the size for a tight end at 6'4", but being at 208, he's more sound for a receiver. That just sounds like a better fit for him. So I think Whittingham is going to do a great job with him. I think he's going to be a project at wide receiver. I don't think it's going to work out necessarily in that sophomore year, but he'll stick with Whittingham. I don't think he's going to transfer again. Maybe I'm wrong because of the NIL and things happen when you transfer that don't work out. But I think Buchanan could be solid for the Wolverines, and I'm going to give this transfer grade a B. I'm going to give it a B minus. I mean, I got to see how he does as a receiver because this is a project. He's coming from tight end and moving over to receiver. So we'll see. B minus. All right, next up we have DeAndre Moore Jr. DeAndre Moore Jr. Was supposed to have a big season for Texas, and it just didn't work out. He's going from Texas over to, Colorado. So he's going to play for Deion Sanders. I don't think Deion has a QB, and I just don't think this is going to work out. You're going from a very good program in Texas that's just going to get better next season. I think they're going to be a playoff team. I'll talk about them when we go over the conferences and teams. So DeAndre Moore is going into his senior year. So he has, basically this is a make it or break it year. The only game he played really well was against Arkansas. Arkansas stinks. They're a joke. They haven't been competitive for years in the SEC. They're basically basement dwellers. He did good against Oklahoma. He had 3 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. But the numbers are just not great. He had 38 receptions for 532 yards and 4 touchdowns. So I don't think he was the number 1 target for Arch Manning. And I don't know if he had any injuries, but those numbers just don't stand out to me. And then you add on to the fact that he's going to a worse program. So I'm going to give this grade for this transfer portal a C minus. I don't see it. If he was younger, I'd say, oh, he has time. Well, now he's going to senior year. He's probably going to slow down. He won't be that good. And Colorado has no QB. They stink. All right, next up, Darrell Gill Jr. I'm losing my voice again. So Darrell Gill Jr., he's going from Syracuse. Let's just double check here. I'm glancing at my phone here. He's going to Syracuse over to Ole Miss. Darrell Gill Jr. is going to his senior year. He stands at 6'3", 190 pounds. He had 32 receptions for 506 yards. He averaged 15.8 yards per catch, and he had 5 touchdowns. The only game he stood out was against Colgate. That's not saying much. I don't even think they're FBS. So I'm going to say that this grade for this receiver is going to be like a C+. I think he's better than Moore. He's going to a better situation. He's going over to an Ole Miss team that is probably going to be a playoff contender. I don't know if they'll make it again, but they'll definitely contend. And it's just a better situation. He has a better QB. So we'll see how he does. But, yeah, I'm going to say C+. All right, Isaiah Canyon. Isaiah Canyon's going from Georgia Tech to Georgia. That's not much of a move, man. That's a pretty decent move. He's from Warner Robins, Georgia. I know where that is. All right, so Canyon, he had 33 receptions for 480 yards and 4 touchdowns. Again, this is a guy that doesn't, pop out to you with his stats. He had 4 receptions for 70 yards against Wake Forest. A couple games where he had 50 reception yards or more. But other than that, I don't know, he's not going to pop out to you. But then again, he's going to Georgia. I feel like Georgia is a run-first team. And maybe he'll reach his full potential with Georgia. I think Georgia's done a good job of receivers. They can't keep their players from going to jail or speeding. Man, Zachariah Branch, who was their best receiver from last season, he got in trouble for, it was something with misconduct. It's just like, dude, why in the world do they keep getting in trouble? It always seems like Georgia's in the news for the wrong reasons, but Isaiah Canyon, if he just keeps his head straight and doesn't do anything stupid, doesn't get into a car and say, you know what, I'm going to go 120 miles per hour, 140 miles per hour, whatever they're doing, he'll be fine. And I think Georgia's done a good job of receiving development. So we'll see how he does, but I'm going to give this grade a A-. It could work, it might not work. All right, next up we have Eric Singleton Jr. So Singleton Jr., he's coming from Auburn, and he's going to be playing for Florida. Florida doesn't have a QB, man. They got the Georgia Tech transfer that I went over last week. What was his name? Let me look him up. Aaron Philo. So having Aaron Philo is ridiculous. I mean, it's not going to work. And with Singleton Jr. stats, he had 58 receptions. That's not bad, with 534 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. So he did pretty decent. He did better than those other 2 receivers I just went over. He's going into his senior season. He's 5'10", 180. He's a fast receiver. But the only game he stood out was against Vanderbilt. I think he played second fiddle to Cam Coleman. Maybe he'll be a number 1 receiver with Florida. We'll see. He has the experience, but Aaron Philo, man, that's your QB. Like, why are you going to that situation when you could go to Ole Miss, when you could go to Georgia? So I'm going to say that this transfer grade for Eric Singleton Jr., I'm going to give it a C-. Florida's not going to be able to throw the ball. Sorry, not sorry. I don't think Philo's the guy. Maybe their backup is, but we'll see. All right, last guy, Nick Marsh. He's going from Michigan State to Indiana. With the Spartans, he had 59 receptions for 662 yards and 6 touchdowns. You know for a fact Curt Cignetti is going to develop this guy. They had Cooper drafted in the first round tonight. I'm not talking about the NFL draft besides this, but he got drafted by the Jets late in the first round. I really see Nick Marsh being a Amarion Cooper 2.0. I think they're going to really develop him. He's young too. He's going into his junior year. He stands at 6'3", 203, and his stats are they're not bad. Like, he didn't have 100 yards receiving for any games, but when you have Josh Hoover as your QB, Curt Cignetti is your coach, you're going to the defending national championship team, I think he's going to do really good things at Indiana. I think this is the second best receiver in the transfer portal to Cam Coleman. He's going to be good. And the thing, too, was that he had Aiden Childs as his QB. Aiden Childs was not good at all. And Hoover is a lot more talented than Aiden Childs. He has a better arm than Aiden Childs for sure. So we'll see how this goes. But I'm going to give this grade an A+ for transfer portal because, again, he's got full potential. He's going to a better program. He's going to a better situation. And his QB is going to be a lot better than the QB he had before. So, all right, so we are done with analyzing the transfer portal for the wide receivers. I know it wasn't as long of an episode as the one we did before about the QBs, but wide receivers is hard to analyze compared to QBs, in my opinion, at least for my analysis. But we're going to call it a show. And I hope you guys liked it. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. I'm trying to get at least 50 followers by the end of May, if possible. That's my only request. And I'm telling you, man, I love doing content. This is awesome. We're doing things on the fly. I'm going to have more things organized as we go around the college football world. I got to do better with my editing skills. I'll even admit it. I'm not the best at it, but who is? And I'm not going to hire an editor. I don't have the money for that. But I hope you all enjoyed this, and we'll catch you guys next week. We're going to analyze the transfer portal for the running backs. I think I'm going to know more about that than the receiving core. But again, I like Cam Coleman and Nick Marsh to be the top two receivers out of this transfer portal for the 2026 college football season. Hope you guys liked it. Again, like, follow, and subscribe. Good night.